For some of us, water is a presumption. It's accessible, it's safe, and it's bountiful. We don't need to think about the necessity of water because it's always available. But what if it wasn't? What if water wasn't so easily available? What if water was all you could think about? All day, every day. This is Sinampande. It is a small village in rural Zimbabwe. There are homes and a couple schools, even a one-day church constructed by Maranatha where 90 members attend. But there is no water in the village. No clean water, that is.
So at the moment, people are getting water from the river, and it's not safe water to drink.
The river that Febby is describing isn't a real river. It's a dried bed, and the water comes from a hand-dug hole in the ground called a seep hole.
A seep hole is where they come to a dry riverbed. I mean, a lot of the rivers in Africa are seasonal, and so when the rains quit, the runoff is gone, and so the riverbed is there, and there's sand, but there's no water flowing. They dig down into that sand to hopefully, like there'll be solid rock sometimes down in the bottom, and they dig down, and the rock will hold the water, and then it bleeds out of the sand and into just a puddle that they dip out with a cup into their container. And it's never clear water. I mean, it might be filtered through sand, but it's always murky looking water, and that's what we're finding is that that's a lot of times the only access to water they have is this type of thing.
It's a common sight to see women digging seep holes or waiting in line for their turn for water. It's a long process and one they have to take multiple times a day.
They wake up in the morning, prepare food for their school children, and then get buckets and go to the river. When you see them passing here, it's not that they are nearby. They travel 2 or 3 kilometers having a bucket on the head. And imagine some are having a bucket of 20 liters and a 5 liter in the hands. And some are pregnant mothers. So they travel long distance. They get water 3 to 4 times a day because the whole family, if you are having children like 7 people in your family, that means they bath, you cook, they drink. So you find they need a lot of water.
The struggle for water also has an impact on children. All over the country, it is typical for children to leave the classroom during the day to gather water for their school for hand washing and drinking. It is a disruption to their education as a single trip can take an hour. In Sinampande and in many parts of the world, this constant search for water has broad ramifications for society and specifically females.
And the water affects so many more things than just you're thirsty and now you're not, but the cleanliness of the water, lack of disease. Girls can go to school and not have to haul water with their mother every morning if the water access is close to home. And then there's more time for livelihood activities, which a woman can, work the garden more or make things that she can sell in the market and stuff, which also improves her life and her family's life a lot.
The solution is to provide clean water to communities in need. Since 2009, Maranatha Volunteers International has provided nearly 1,000 water wells, most of them in sub-Saharan Africa, where the crisis affects more than 345 million people. These wells are typically drilled in areas where Maranatha has already built a school or a church. Maranatha has also been able to repair existing water wells whenever possible. Through these efforts, Maranatha's work has provided clean water to an estimated 500,000 people. Now, that number has the potential to grow exponentially. In 2017, a donor sponsored a well rig for Maranatha in Africa. Now, instead of working with contractors in Zimbabwe, Maranatha has our own team go from village to village to drill for water.
Having our own drilling equipment and support team to run it would allow us, if funding was available, to drill 200 wells a year, up to 200 wells a year.
At an estimated 500 people per village, that means Maranatha could impact 100,000 lives each year through our water program. When we come back, we'll go on the road with the well drilling crew to get a glimpse of the need for water and how wells are making a difference.
Bolivia. Located in the heart of South America, is a captivating country brimming with breathtaking landscapes, colorful culture, and welcoming people. Here, everyone is a missionary, inviting neighbors to church and creating community for people to belong. Their primary challenge? Churches. There are not enough churches in Bolivia, and people are meeting in broken buildings, people's homes, and dusty sheds. Starting in 2018, we'll be taking the mission of Maranatha to every part of Bolivia. Join the movement, make a donation, or volunteer on an upcoming project.
In the most rural and desolate parts of Zimbabwe, there is a crisis. Villages have no access to water. The people and the earth are parched. So Maranatha began drilling wells. Then in 2017, a generous sponsor funded the purchase of a well drilling rig for Maranatha. After several months of fabrication and obtaining permits, the rig was delivered to Zimbabwe. The plan is to bring water to more villages in Africa. This is Gerald Paul. He works with Maranatha in Africa.
Basically, I've been running the drilling team, doing repairs and maintenance to wells, and having contractors to drill our wells, and of course lately having our own well rig, starting that project off from the ground.
Gerald and his guys have traversed the country, spending long hours on the road in search of water.
Life on the road is difficult and challenging, and that's what makes it so interesting. You know, if you think of, we drill, 1 to 3 holes in a day. You're sleeping at a different campsite every night, and so yes, it does get challenging. You've got to put out your tents, and you've got to, make your base, and then the challenge of getting them.
At each village, the local church helps to provide food. It is a simple meal, and it is their way of showing gratitude for the crew's efforts. But the work of actually drilling a well begins months before the crew even arrives at their location.
Drilling a water well is not just as easy as you think it is. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Firstly, the site visits. And then, of course, once you've done the site visit and you've seen that there is definitely a need in the area, and looking at where's the nearest well and so on, then you've got to now go to the authorities and get permission to drill the boreholes. And once you've got that permission, you've got to get a geologist out and do site surveys, have that done to see the feasibility of what they recommend or what not to recommend. And then getting out to the site, rigging up and the challenges of getting to there, how are you going to get through the bush, or, has the road been cleared? Is it wide enough to get trucks in?
Once the crew arrives, the second half of the work begins. It is arguably the more difficult portion of the job, physically and emotionally. There is a lot of anticipation at the arrival of Maranatha.
You can only see the need. I mean, the people are battling. They're striving for survival. That's what we're working at. This is what we bring relief to, and that's what drives us forward. I mean,
For Gerald, the work is personal. He has witnessed such hardship and the most urgent situations out in the field. His job is difficult, but it is a mission and calling. Sinampande, Febi's village, is the first place the crew visits for this recent trip in Zimbabwe. This is where a seep hole is the village's only source of water. It is water that is dirty and unsafe to drink. Here, the people have been waiting for Maranatha for hours. They are eager, and Gerald has to carefully balance hope with the possibility that the crew will not hit water.
Well, you know what we try and do is when we arrive at a site, we get the community together. Usually we have quite an audience, and we pray with them. And in our prayer, we ask God to be with the proceedings. We ask God to help us with the work that we're doing to keep us safe, and we also ask God to help us accept the outcome of the well, whether we get water or whether we're not.
After praying, the drilling begins.
Drilling a borehole is challenging, and that's what makes the work of drilling so interesting, because every situation is different. When you're drilling, you're getting the samples out all the time. You've got to keep a sharp record, especially of all the formation changes, because you've got to identify now where you're getting your water from and what areas are like, for instance, if you've got sand or if you've got stone or you're in rock, and we put them in piles so that we can actually see as the formations are developing and changing, that we can see what we're going through in that.
The samples can also reveal if water is near. And on this occasion at Sinampande, after hours of drilling, the news is looking grim.
Yeah, we're down to 90 meters. I don't think we've got any water here so far. It's clay stone all the way down to 90 meters. There's been no change in the structure. So there's a decision. We've either got to go down deeper or we just call it a day here. Quite unfortunate, these people really need water. So it's either we're going to leave them without water, or we maybe go and try and find some a bit deeper down there and to see if the structure will actually change, because right now it doesn't look positive.
As Gerald and David discuss the options, the people of Sinampande continue to wait. It's getting dark and the crew is tired. In the end, they decide to keep drilling and go beyond the depth recommended by the geology report.
That's the hardest decision to give. Like if you're getting a dry well, and you don't want to leave the place without leaving water, or without hitting water. So that makes it very difficult for us. That's the hardest part of my work. Is, do I carry on? Do we have enough fuel for it? Is this in our budget? And do I press on? It's these type of questions that you've got to make a decision.
As the night wears on, the crowd thins out. The hope wanes too, until finally, it's gone. There is no water in Sinampande. The next morning, life in Sinampande continues, unchanged. The women head to the same seep hole. For now, there will be no vegetable gardens, no fresh water. There will be no well in Sinampande.
Now, yesterday, people are not feeling well. They are sick, but it's not a disease, just the pain they are feeling. So really now the whole community is sad because we have failed to get water yesterday.
That's the hardest part, really. It's to leave that place without giving them water. It breaks one's heart, and you know, we're not there not to get water, we're there to give them water. And you know, it's really saddening when you've got to say, look, I'm sorry, we've tried.
The crew has to keep moving. There are more villages to visit. The next site is Umpinia, located about 22 miles from Sinampande. This place is so barren and hot that it makes the last village feel lush by comparison. It is a 35-minute walk to the nearest Seep Hole. The desperation, the thirst, is palpable. Once again, the crew sets up under the curious gaze of the community. Once again, Gerald and his team start drilling, examining the soil and waiting for good news. Shockingly, it never comes. After dozens of successful outcomes in other parts of Zimbabwe, this week is churning up dry holes and crushing disappointment. In times like this, faith can take a beating. But Gerald, who has been helping to drill wells in Africa for nearly 10 years, has perspective.
We don't want to presume that God is going to supply us water all the time. You know, we ask God to help us to accept the outcome of the situation.
This is what Gerald prays with the community and for himself each time he turns on the drill. When we come back, finally, hope springs anew.
Have you been wanting to take your family on a mission project? If so, we have 3 great options for you to consider. This summer, Maranatha will be hosting a family project in Bolivia. We will help construct a church as well as complete several painting projects in the community from June 21 to July 1st. In December, Maranatha will return to Bolivia for another family project. Scheduled from December 20 to January 1, this project will allow families to spend Christmas serving others in the beautiful countryside around Cochabamba. Another family project is scheduled over Christmas for those that want to visit India. This project will take place from December 21 to January 3 at the Kunti Avenue School in northern India. The focus of these mission trips will be on families, so we have lots of activities planned for all ages. To sign up for these projects or to view our entire project calendar, just visit our website at maranatha.org.
After an unusually rough start with 2 failed attempts at providing a well, the Maranatha crew heads to the 3rd and last village for this week. This is Chilimbe. When we arrive, people are waiting under the shade of the one-day church. About 70 people attend here each Sabbath.
Then you are a liar, right?
Unlike Sinampande and Umpinia, Chilimbe has a water source, a spring, but it is located in the most inconvenient spot at the bottom of a steep and rocky ravine. Women and children must navigate this path several times a day. The process can take hours, depending on the need and distance from the spring to their home. Like in Sinampande, there is also a school in Chilimbe. Approximately 360 students attend this primary school. Also like in Sinampande, the students have mandatory breaks where they must leave class to collect water.
On 3 different occasions per week, we normally send children to go and fetch water. Normally they fetch water for washing their hands after visiting the toilet, or maybe during break when they want to take some food, or during lunch. And at times we normally request pupils to fetch water even for members of staff. And we are forced to send our pupils away for water during lessons, and they are disturbed. That means learning stops, and normally 2 members of staff accompany the children to the spring. And as they go there, lessons will have stopped. So you find that maybe an hour or 2 hours of non-learning is taken away.
Vincent has heard about Maranatha's arrival in the village, and the possibility of a well will have a considerable impact on his students. The Chilimbe Seventh-day Adventist Church, where the borehole would be located, is only a few minutes' walk from the school. If the crew is successful, the time students spend on gathering water will be cut by more than half. Everyone in Chilimbe will have more time. Easier access to water will change everything. For the 3rd time in 4 days, the crew sets up the drill, and the waiting game begins. This time, they hit water. Quickly, the crew moves on to the final stage of providing a well. A cement team pulls up with a mixer and forms to pour a concrete base around the hole. They set a pump, then wait for the cement to cure before people are invited to use the well.
The reward is seeing the water and seeing the faces of the people and the excitement of the people when we get the water. It brings a spiritual upliftment, and it brings just so much relief to us as people.
The new well that has just been constructed will help us a great deal. Presently, somewhere at the back there is a garden, but we're not able to use the garden fully because of the distance we were fetching water. But now that we are going to have a bowl nearby, I'm sure it will help us greatly, because we will be getting the water nearer and the time won't be wasted.
After 5 days of driving into the deepest corners of the Zimbabwe bush, encountering dire situations, incredible need, and heartbreaking disappointment, the Maranatha well team ended their week on a happy note. One that will build into transformation for an entire community. Thanks to the dedication of Gerald's crew and the generosity of so many donors, Maranatha has provided 71 wells in Zimbabwe. Now, Maranatha's rig is in Kenya to launch a water program in some of the country's most remote places. Finding water in these areas will be a challenge and more costly, but the need is critical, and Maranatha is committed to drilling as many wells as possible for the people of Kenya. These projects need your support and funding. Please help Maranatha to bring water to communities in crisis. Make a donation. With our new rig, we have the potential to drill 200 wells a year if we have the funding. Together, we have the potential to impact 100,000 lives each year with water. Water is time. It is food, work, health, joy, hope. Water is life.
Well, this is what makes my work exciting. You know, when you get out there and you see the needs of the people, we have it easy. You know, we live in comfort. We have a house, we open the faucet and the water comes out. These people have to walk for miles to get water, and their daily stress revolves around survival, and that's getting water and eating. And for us to make their burden a lot lighter by providing water where it's only a short distance from their home, that's amazing. It's absolutely, it just does something to you. This is what makes me carry on, because drilling is a hard life. It's not easy. When it comes to our family situation, being away from home for so many days at a time, those things those stresses are hard. It's real, but you know, it's worth it in the end for when we are actually helping people, because that's what we're all about. I mean, that's what Christianity is about. It's helping people.